Welcome to Is It Philosophy? For thousands of years, philosophy has been the domain of the elite, a form of thought placed on a tall pedestal. Well, not anymore. I want to take it back to its roots, simply the love of wisdom. A guest will join me each episode as we try to apply critical thinking to a new topic. At the end, it will be up to you to decide. Is it philosophy? All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode. Today, we are joined by Alice Lauren, and we are going to talk about what is love. A very interesting topic, especially given the season premiere episode on soulmates. So I think this is kind of an extension on that. And with that idea in mind, I want to give you, Lauren, the chance, or Alice, I'm sorry. I want to give you the chance to kind of give your first take on it. What is your idea on this?
I don't know. I feel like I was someone. I guess I'll kind of start with myself historically. So, I've always been a pretty boy crazy girl. I had my first crush when I was 5. I first fell in love when I was 9, but I always had, crushes ever since. And when I was 11, I started watching the Bachelor, the Bachelorette, the whole franchise thing, and that, especially from such a young age, shaped a lot of my ideas on love. So to me, I have a more romantic take on it. I've been watching a lot of TED Talks and things about oxytocin and dopamine and all those kinds of things, and that is true. I have both a really romantic take, but also trying to have more of a grounded sort of idea as well, and kind of figure out how to mesh this fairy tale idea that even societally we have of love with, okay, but what is it really long term?
What is your idea of love then? Is it this romantic thing that is between two people? Because if you go back and look at the Greeks,
yeah,
they had a very long list of 8 or 9, I forget now, different types of love that a person can feel.
Yeah.
I think we as a society have kind of lost that. So for you personally, I'm curious, what is it that you define as a love or a loving relationship or just love in general?
I think it's something that maybe has a bit of, I don't want to say lust in it, because I guess that's true as well. And I'm talking, specifically romantic relationships, but I think it's something where you do have to have kind of that, the weak in the knees, butterflies in your stomach, giddy sort of thing, at least at first, and hopefully at different points in your love journey, I guess. But I do think that it is that deep warmth that. Well, I'll give you an example. So when I was 9, I guess I'll kind of go back to sort of the purest love, right? Untainted by sexuality or anything like that. So when I was 9, the boy that I felt that I was in love with, he liked another girl. And because I wanted to do kind of what was best for him, what would make him happy, yes, it would hurt me, but I felt very selfless, at that time for him. I talked him up to that other girl. They started dating and dated for 8 months or whatever, typical middle school or relationship. But it's the idea of being selfless. It's the idea of, companionship. There are just so many different elements to it, when you're just so giving of yourself, and you kind of see yourself as a unit in a way, but hopefully also in a healthy individual way too. It's the fairy tale, but it's not the fairy tale always, because there are real things that happen in life too. So
I'm gonna play a bit of the devil's advocate, and don't
okay.
hate me because that's kind of what the show is based on, right? So I have to disagree and argue with you on one point. I don't believe, and maybe you can change my mind on this, but I don't believe in such a thing as a pure selfless love. I think all love and all acts of love are purely driven by a selfless or a selfish motive.
Okay.
Whether it be for, like in your story, you talk this guy up to your friend.
Yeah.
would there not be a bit of selfishness in this, in hoping that he sees how caring you are and how loving you are and how willing you are to let him go, that he then goes, wow, this is a perfect person, I can't let this person go, and then ultimately comes back to you? And I know that's a lot to put on somebody who's in middle school in a thought process,
Yeah.
but I tend to think that, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but I tend to think that almost all of our interactions and ideals on love, we want to believe are selfless, or selfless.
Mm-hmm.
But I wholeheartedly think in the end, it's all driven by a need to fulfill something within ourselves.
I mean, I would say, at least for that specific situation, I don't know if he ever really knew. It was probably more of one of those random anonymous acts of kindness. But to kind of take your point, I mean, there is that feeling of, well, I did something nice for someone. I mean, any sort of, I did something nice for someone else, even if it's helping someone else, you still have that, like, yeah, I'm a good person. I mean, it's sometimes why people take pictures of someone homeless and put a Facebook status, oh, I just gave them money, or I just went inside and bought them a sandwich, because they want that. They want people to high five them and give them a pat on the back there. So maybe, I mean, I guess in that sense, but then I don't know how much to tangent off necessarily, but I guess the idea of, even when you're trying to hang out with someone, you're basically using your friends, you're using them for companionship. That's why the kind of, I don't know exactly how to put it, but sometimes I kind of hear that, like, oh, you're just using me, and I feel like, well, for friendship, for because you're very nice. I mean, there's a difference between, I'm using you to buy me all my meals, and I'm using you because you're a nice, sweet person, and I have fun with you. I mean, we're all kind of using each other in some way. So I don't know.
Well, I think the important thing is to distinguish between, I'm not saying that we're being selfish in our love in a malicious way or in a way
Yeah.
that's out to be harmful to people,
Hmm.
but I wholeheartedly believe that it requires a bit of self-exploration, I guess,
Hmm.
or the ability to step outside of your own motives and see them for their true motive, what they truly are, right? Like,
Okay.
for instance, and I don't want to go too graphic or detailed on this because I want to try to keep at least a PG rating, but I love my wife dearly. I've loved her for 15 years. We've been together,
Hmm.
but most nights, I will offer her what she really enjoys, which is she likes her back rubbed and her head scratched when we go to sleep.
Hmm.
And I say to her, and I try to convince myself, that these acts are out of a pure, selfless love for her and wanting her to be comfortable and enjoy her evening.
Hmm.
Every guy out there is going to tell you the same thing if they're being honest to you. When we're offering you a back rub, we have ulterior motives. It's just the truth of the nature. And if they're telling you it's not, then they're lying to you or themselves.
Yeah.
I think in that instance, pure love, selfless love is something that it did exist at one point, but I don't think it does anymore. And like you said, I think social media and those types of things have played a big part in its death, because we're all seeking that instant gratification that, hey, look at me, I'm a great person. Look at what
Hmm.
I'm doing. Look at this love I'm giving out to the world or to people or to society in general. It just eats away at our ability to see things outside of ourselves, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that reminds me. A guy once told me that men don't even like kissing; they just do it for women. Like, it's that same, like, you're just trying to lead to something else. But yeah, I mean, and yeah, especially with social media and the Instagram couples, and celebrity, couple. I mean, couple hashtag couple goals and celebrity goals and this and that. I mean, I know I was listening to Anna Faris's podcast, and she was previously married to Chris Pratt, and a lot of people were like, well, when they were married, it was just hashtag couple goals. Everybody looked up to them, and then when they divorced, it was like, well, that's a lot of pressure. I mean, same with a lot of the Bachelor couples that I watch. There's so much of a pressure after the show to be together because people are freaking rooting for them. So yeah, definitely some things have changed.
Well, and I think that those types of shows, The Bachelor, I had a friend who does camera work, and he did a show called, what was it called? Love at First Sight, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
He did a video or did video for one of those shows. I think, and my wife will hate me when she hears this. I think all of those shows are destroying our ability to truly love someone in a way that is legitimate. It's taking love and turning it into this institution, this idea that you can meet somebody, spend 20 minutes with them, know that you're compatible with them, and fall in love with them. And it doesn't work that way, at least not in my experience. Maybe I'm way out of touch with reality, but I've never had it happen that way.
Yeah, I've taken a lot from the Bachelor franchise that I kind of use in my daily life, but the idea of I can date someone for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever the time frame is on these shows, and then want to get engaged so quickly, and then couples afterwards say it's called like engage dating or whatever, because now after the show you're getting to know, your person, which to me engagement is like you already know. I don't want someone to ruin kind of the sanctity of engagement. So in that sense, it's kind of ruining that.
I like what you just said, and I kind of want to dive down that rabbit hole for a minute. You said when you hit engagement, you just know you know you're in love,
Yeah.
and I'm going to play a devil's advocate and say that I don't think that that's the case either, because, and for one simple reason, and I'll give you that reason and explanation. My wife and I, like I said, we've been married for almost 15 years. We've been married 15 years in February next year. It's only been in the past, at best guess, maybe 3 or 4, at most 5 years, that I can honestly say, and she'll back me up on this if she was in here, that we have truly known what it means to love the other person completely. That full on, I think it's called agape love, if we're looking at the Greek word for it, where you're completely selflessly driven in a sense for that person. I know I'm contradicting myself there, but follow me.
Yeah.
It's not something we knew or even were able to fathom the first 10 years of our marriage. We had no idea what that meant to truly love that other person to the point that you would be willing to sacrifice yourself for that person. So I don't know that we can get to that point even after a year or 2 years of a relationship. I think that's something that has to be built up through shared experience, right? Through shared suffering, through shared pain that you deal with throughout a course of a 10, 15, 20, 30-year marriage, relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's happily ever after, but not happily always after, I guess, in a sense. But I would hope that like those bad times were because I don't know, not hoping that bad things happened, but you do need that person that is there, when things are not as glamorous. I mean, I know my grandma will probably be moving to a nursing home soon, and so that must be very. I mean, I know it's very difficult for my mom right now, and so having my dad and having other love, obviously, to go back to other friend love and different familial loves that you can have is very important. I mean, there's going to be struggles that people go through, death, miscarriage, aging parents, all those things where it's not a glamorous fairy tale, but that's kind of the deep love right there.
There's and I'm trying to think of it. I know I'm going to be corrected once I say this by somebody who's listening. But there's a formula somewhere floating around the internet that is love is basically struggle over time, and something to that effect, where you don't truly know that you love a person till you've struggled with that person and come through the other side. And I think there's a tremendous amount of truth to that. And I think that's why a lot of marriages fail, is because we assume that you're never supposed to struggle. I've got family members who have been married 5, 6, 7 years, and they've never dealt with a true struggle in their marriage. And it scares me when they finally have those struggles, if they're going to survive them, because your marriage has to be tested for it to be able to withstand anything, in my opinion. So going back though, I want to kind of circle back to something. At the top of the show, we were talking about romantic love,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the focus of everything. I think that there's a misnomer with the idea of the only type of love being romantic love, or the biggest type of love being romantic love.
Hmm.
And I think that leads a lot of struggle, especially for men. Men have this weird thing with telling somebody I love you in a sense of a friendship, right? You'll
Yeah.
never hear two men, or very rarely hear two men come up to each other and go, "Man, I love you." Right? Not in any real sense, right? You'll hear it in the joking, "Man, you're awesome, I love you," but it's never in a real deep meaning type of way.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fear of that where we associate love with sexual feelings.
Yeah.
I don't know, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, yeah, I mean that's kind of why I said the thing about, going back to when I, first had crushes and love and stuff, because that, that is kind of the purer time. I mean, to me, I am striving for, I want the butterflies, I want the heart pounding, I want the, crazy euphoria sort of feeling. But what everybody tells me, and when I was going to, I guess, ask you, though I think I know the answer, is, do you still have those euphoric, you see your wife and you have the butterflies in your stomach, and I'm sure would probably be exhausting if every day was like your wedding day of emotion. But
It so that's a difficult question to answer,
yeah.
because under everyday circumstance,
Yeah.
no, it's not that way. It becomes a
But then how do you know that if you don't have that, how do you know you love her and not that, now we're just best friends?
I think it's both. I think it has to be both.
Oh
I
yeah, of course.
I
Yeah.
think for a relationship, well, you say of course, but I know a lot of couples who wouldn't say that they're best friends with their spouse. I think it has to be both, because for two reasons. One, I think it has to be both because the only way love blossoms is through friendship, and friendship is, I forget the definition of it. I looked it up once before, but it's basically it's like the definition of love, where friendship is two people who have struggled together and remained close.
Yeah.
In that instance, love and friendship are kind of the same thing. So you have to have that love or that friendship in your marriage for it to last.
Hmm.
Now, I think it goes beyond that, right? I think not only is it a friendship, but it's a willingness to share parts of you that you've never shared with another living soul,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's where those butterflies come back in, is when my wife and I are sitting on the couch on a weekend evening. The kids are in bed, it's just us. Maybe the show we're watching is boring, we're not really watching it,
Yeah.
and we go into a one of our deeper conversations that we have.
Hmm.
In those instances, wholeheartedly, those butterflies come back, and it's like I remember now why I chose you as my person for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. So I think the answer, it has to be, for me anyway, it has to be both of those things.
Yeah. You still feel like best friends, but also, and I saw this, like, I don't know, was meme or some sort of story where it's like, you see your significant other kind of coming around the aisle at the grocery store, and like the split second before you recognize that it's them, you're like, ooh, like, who is that? And you're like, that's my husband, that's my wife. So like you still kind of have that excitement at certain times, because it would be exhausting if you were constantly absolutely obsessed and heart pounding and freaking out all the time.
If that's the case, I really feel bad for my wife at the grocery store, that she comes around the corner and sees a fat, balding, middle-aged man.
Oh yeah, oh, that's my hubby. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh boy, I get to go home to that." Yeah. No, I'm sure she doesn't feel that way. I love you, sweetie. So I do think, though, that we have to redefine love. I think we need to expand it. I think we need to go back, honestly, to what the Greeks had. I think the Greeks had it right all those thousands of years ago, with there being different types of love. It's funny, you talked about the spousal love, where it's the butterflies and the euphoria and type, because an article I was reading actually today talked about how the Greeks actually viewed that as the most dangerous type of love, because it's the type of love that it takes away your ability to think in a cognitive, responsible, beneficial way. And I think most of us who have been down that path probably would agree with that. I know I agree with that, right? When you're first meet somebody and you're in that overwhelming, passionate, can't be without the person mindset, nothing gets done. I know I damn near lost my job when my
Oh
wife and I
yeah,
first met because, yeah, I didn't want to do anything except talk to her on the phone.
yeah.
I think there has to be this separation of different types of love because you don't want to associate that type of love with, let's say, your kids
Yeah.
or your best friend
Yeah.
or your parents, right? So
Yeah, I always joke like I want the feeling for someone the way that I feel when I see my food coming at a restaurant, or I fall in love with every dog that I see, and I mean that's me all the time. I'll see a dog outside and I'll be like, I love you, dog. Like you just it's just that I mean it's silly, but like there's so many different kinds of love for sure.
I want to then explore that idea because my wife is the same way, and she's not only with dogs; she's like that with friends, right? My wife is the one that every time she's on the phone with a good friend of hers, she ends the conversation with "I love you," and
Oh
it not
yeah,
in a sexual way, right? I guess I
yeah.
hope maybe I don't know,
No, maybe.
but right, but that's how she will always end the conversation. I was reading; it was a psychologist. I forget who now, but I was reading about a psychologist who was talking about how that approach to love is actually destroying the concept and the idea of love and cheapening it and turning it into this thing that we just say because we say it.
Yeah.
And you were talking about that with the dogs, and I'm sure you're probably, based on that conversation, one of those that will, with friends and whatnot too. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm making assumptions now.
I don't know about that. I guess so, but more so guy friends. I don't know. With girlfriends, it's tough because for me, I'm like, how do you know that a girl's your friend? Because you can't really seduce a girl. I guess to like seducing a friend is a little bit different, especially as you get older. It's not like. Well, depending. If I join an activity, that's easier. But I'm just thinking, like, when you're little and you're like, oh, we're all on the same soccer team, or I invited my class to my birthday party. That's a little bit different. So I think that's also why we need to have these different kinds of loves sort of out there, because with this confusion about, well, how do we be friends with people as grown-ups and love people as friends. I think that's just very important.
I agree with that, and and I also think that's too. I have to agree with the psychologist on that one, that it is causing it to be a very confusing idea for people, right? Especially when you're dealing with Facebook and all of these different things that are just causing a lot of issues, I think.
Yeah, I know that. Well, maybe not. I was gonna say I know if a guy likes me if he kisses me, although that might not even be true because men can kiss or sleep with someone or whatever and not have those feelings. But that's like a whole other thing. But you don't know, if a girl likes you unless she just invites you more. But then are you her best friend? Now we have groups of friends and all that kind of stuff.
That's an interesting idea, right?
Yeah,
Because I think you're right, and I struggle with that personally.
yeah.
But I know that most men that I know are able to separate
Hmm.
the idea of sex and love and kissing and love and all of these different aspects that traditionally women associate with the idea. And you're a woman, so maybe you can correct me on this, but you guys associate those things with being in love, right? If I'm sleeping with somebody, it's because I love them. If I'm giving somebody a kiss, a passionate kiss, it's because I love them, right? Whereas men, we have the ability to kind of compartmentalize all of that. And I can sleep with you and not love you, or I can kiss you in a passionate way and not really love you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would say maybe that's sort of changing now. I don't want to just say, oh, it's just a stereotype, because I think that there is more of that female idea to, sex and love kind of goes together, or, like for me personally, like I'm a virgin, and so I want to wait until I'm in love to have sex. And men are kind of like, well, you can separate the two. Well, yeah, maybe after that, whatever, if I have partners after that. But I just I'm not really sure there. I kind of put those two I kind of put those two together, at least for that sort of idea of virginity and what to expect, and you have to be so in love and crazy about the person to even want to do something like that.
And I actually applaud that, because I wholeheartedly think that that is something we're losing in our modern society, is
Mm-hmm.
that ability to, I don't want to say wait on gratification, but I guess it is sort of, because it does give you that opportunity to really explore, is this somebody that I truly love and not just somebody I want to get in the pants of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a tremendous boost to yourself and your
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem, knowing that you have that ability and that willpower to wait. I think that's
Yeah.
wholeheartedly, I applaud that tremendously. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's amazing.
But I've had both, I've had female, I think my cousins and female, I guess people, males, whoever, saying, well, just, get it over with. It won't be good, the first time anyway. But then I hear, well, if you're in love or if you're comfortable with the person, then, silly things that happen, in that, night or whatever, could, you're gonna laugh about it. It's fine, and you'll get through it together, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of truth to the idea that once you are comfortable enough with somebody and in love enough with somebody, that all of those things that seemed such a issue beforehand turn into no big deal. Like, for instance, the other night, and this kind of got brought up on another episode, but the other night my wife and I were arguing,
Yeah.
literally arguing over the idea of white privilege.
Oh.
And she's wholeheartedly on the side of the coin of, there's such a thing, it's a terrible thing, and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I don't buy it. And we had a very deep argument on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, we can both look at each other and go, you know what? You can have your belief. I can have my belief. And that's okay. We still love each other. We're still going to go to bed and sleep next to each other and have no issue with it. And I think that's something that comes with knowing that that person inside and out, and their emotions and the way they think and the way they operate, that only comes with love that's grown over an extended amount of time, I guess.
Yeah, that you're not basically attacking the other person. You might disagree with their ideas. You didn't kind of maybe sarcastically say like, "Are you serious? God, you're dumb," or that kind of stuff. You as adults disagreed on issues.
But I don't think we're able to do that as adults. I think adults have, especially now, I think we have this issue with, if you disagree with me, you don't love me, or you don't care for me, or you don't respect me if we have a difference of opinion. And again, I think that goes back to the high divorce rate that we're seeing in our country personally.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it's a lack of trying then, or do you think, I don't want to like blow this whole thing open, but do you think it's the they're not my soulmate, kind of idea?
Oh, the soulmate thing. I think the idea of soulmates, and the episode hasn't released yet, so that's okay. But I think the idea of soulmates is so misguided and so messed up, and so causing a tremendous amount of suffering for people who are looking for that soulmate, and they assume if you have a disagreement with somebody, that they're obviously not your soulmate. That's a sign that this person wasn't meant for me. And again, I know it hasn't released yet, but in that episode, we actually have that conversation. I talked with a spiritual medium on
Mm-hmm.
that, and her take on it, and I love her take on it, is your soulmate is going to be the person that challenges you the most. It's going to be the person that most aggravates you, that most drives you crazy, and it's probably going to be the most difficult relationship you ever have,
Mm.
because that person is going to mirror you and yourself, both good and bad. And I love that idea, and I wholeheartedly subscribe to that idea after her and I talked, because I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think if somebody is your soulmate, then they're a reflection of you, and they're going to be the reflection of everything you like and dislike about yourself.
Well, that just sounds horrible.
Doesn't it? And it's a terrible idea, but it's not, though, to me. And I love that idea. I think it's a beautiful idea, because I have the opinion, and before we had that episode, I was of the opinion that soulmates don't exist and they're terrible. But coming away from it, I kind of can see how having that soulmate, and actually the one that I fell in love with was the idea of a twin flame, right? And a twin flame is somebody who is your your complete polar opposite, your completed self.
Hmm.
Look it up if you don't know what it is. It's an amazing idea. I haven't fully researched it yet. I wholeheartedly subscribe to the idea that my wife and I 100% are twin flames, because we are in most ways complete opposites of each other. She is totally atheist, believes when you die, you go into a hole in the ground and it's dark and that's it. Where I've got a very definitive spiritual belief. We have different ideas on raising the children. We've got different ideas on a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, those differences of opinion and those differences in ideas, in our opinion, in both of our opinions, are what brings us closer together.
Hmm.
I love that take, and I love the fact that that can be a thing, because if you look at it through that lens, and I'm going back to the divorce rate in this country, but if you look at it through that lens, having that disagreement with somebody is beautiful and builds a stronger, healthier bond with them.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because yeah, I do wonder if you do have to be so similar, or for example, my boyfriend in college was like super nerdy into anime, into all these different kind of nerd just video games, all the nerdy things, and I'm totally not that person, and so it kind of became this, well, there's some shows, some little things that we bonded over, and there were some things we met doing improv comedy, but there were some things where I was like, yeah, I'm never gonna understand, your love of anime, for example.
And I think that's where a lot of people falter on this, because to me that's a beautiful thing. My wife, for instance, is very social. She loves to be around friends and family. The larger the crowd, the more happy she is and the more comfortable she is. I'm not. I'm the opposite. I would rather be at home on the couch by myself watching Netflix in my underwear, because I don't like people. I don't like gathering around people. The most outgoing I ever am is on my shows.
Yeah.
Outside of this room, and once I take the headphones off, I am a totally different person. And it truly is. It's weird. I think we need those people to complete us. And without that person, and I'm using myself as the example, but without my wife pushing me to go do social things, to get out and go to friends' parties and birthday parties and hang out with friends, I'd never leave the house. I really wouldn't. And I think we need that opposing force, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to push us to do things that are outside of our comfort zone and help us grow. A couple weekends ago, my wife and I went on a weekend trip together without the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a very, very long conversation on this topic. And our conclusion, and I'll share this with you and everybody listening, but our conclusion was the goal of a marriage and somebody who is your true love, somebody who is meant to be with you, is the person who's pushing you to be a better person, not for them and not because it's what they want, but it's because it completes you and forces you out of your comfort zone and makes you do things that once you do them, you're glad you did them. And it makes you a more well-rounded, more complete individual for yourself.
So you keep talking about kind of completing and, some thinking kind of the idea of other halves. Do you think that you come into a relationship sort of, you're finding your other half, or are you two whole people? I know sometimes I hear about like, it's one, and this might be a different thing, but kind of giving, 50-50, where you're really supposed to be giving 100 to the marriage, I guess. So that's just an interesting idea of like, this person's my other half versus I'm a whole person, they're a whole person.
I know exactly what I should say, and I should say that you come into the relationship a whole person, and I think you do to an extent. The way I equate it is this. You've got two opposing forces. You've got the sun that rises on its own time, and you've got the moon that rises on its own time. They're both complete in themselves. They both exist separate from each other, but they both depend on each other. The moon gets its light from the sun. You know what I mean? They are two whole things, but they complete one full day of existence for us.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of where that comes in, is we're both whole people. We're not flawed, but without the other one, you can't exist, right? It's harder to be, I don't know. I know where I was going with that. And my train of thought trailed and went away. But basically the idea is I wholeheartedly think that we're both complete people, but we are incomplete in our completeness. I guess, if that makes
I
sense.
think I know what you mean. Yeah.
We bring out things in the other one that has been hidden or buried or denied, I
Hmm.
guess is the best way to put it. I don't
Yeah.
know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think so because I think yeah. That was a good metaphor with the sun and the moon that they're both important but they're also great together. So
Coming up on the end of the episode, I like to give my guests the chance to kind of share the final thought. So, given the conversation, what would you say if we were to answer the question, what is love?
oh
What would your
jeez.
answer be? I know it's putting you on the
I
spot.
Yeah, no, it's just that I'm so sad because I really, really want to think of it, super Disney princess and prince, kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like I have so many more things because I'm also really upset about the idea of like, well, it takes work. That's just work. Ugh,
Yeah.
yikes. No, it should be effortless. If you're in love, love conquers all, right? Love. Oh my gosh, there was something that I told my friend that I would mention on here because he told me something very recently. I have to find it was like an acronym of lust overcomes virtuous evil. So that was I was like, it's fantastic. And then I'm like, but I have no idea. Like, and I think it's even what you were saying that when the lust that you have for someone or something is strong enough, it can overpower your self-righteous desires.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I guess then our answer is that, and correct me if this is not what you're taking away from it, but I guess the answer then is love is what drives us to not only be better for ourselves, but to be better for the people we value in our lives.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a combination of that. You can have that fairy tale, you can have all of those things, but like even as you were saying, the struggles and everything, the negatives, I guess, so to speak, are also important. But I think also kind of to add on to the struggles is that you have to be careful with what the struggles are because if it's something like sickness, children, potentially aging parents, those are miscarriage, those things are struggles. But when it's you are having very, very bad fights where you're kind of attacking each other. I had someone say, oh, we've been through all this stuff. He's cheated on me a million times, and I'm kind of his ride or die, so to speak. He's cheated on me, he's gotten girls pregnant, he's hit me, he's this, he's that. I mean, there are some struggles, that that you are not, you are not necessarily to get through. People really are like, well, no, we pride ourselves, and on social media, a lot of people want to say, well, we've been through so much. Make sure that the been through so much are, is the right things, the life experiences, not the and he's horrible to me and I've gotten through that and you should pat me on the back, I guess.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I do think that I used to teach a family violence class, and I do think there is something in women, and I hate to generalize, but
Yeah.
there's something in women that has this idea where if I can get through this thing that he's doing to me, whatever violence or harm
Yeah.
or self-deprecating thing he's doing to me, if I can get through this and show how much I care about him and show how much I love him through all of this,
Yeah.
then I've won the relationship, and I can get him to be faithful or get him to not be abusive or get him to not be whatever it is that he's doing to me that I have to get through. And I think you're wholeheartedly right. I think those aren't the kind of struggles that need to be worked through to build a loving relationship. The kind of struggles we're talking about, and I think I've understand what you're saying, are the death of a parent, the death of a sibling, the things that are normal parts of life that you've gone through with this person,
Yeah.
held each other's hand, hugged each other while you cried over this event,
Hmm.
and have grieved over this together, and that grief has made you stronger together and built that bond together.
Yeah, you don't win some sort of lottery or you don't win any prizes for how much crap you put up with. But when it's something that's like a life experience, as you just said, I mean, you still don't win any sort of lottery in that sense. But
I love it. I think that's a great place to end it on. And I want to give you the opportunity before we go. I apologize. I didn't do a lot of research on you ahead of time. Do you have a podcast or a blog or something that you want to share with everybody where they can get a hold of you?
No, I don't really have any of those things. I have, well, I'll first kind of do my social medias. So you can find me on Alice Lauren on Facebook, and my Twitter is Alimezh, Alimezh. And on both of those, you can see I've been guesting on a ton of podcasts, especially movie ones. I do comedy in upstate New York. So if anyone who's listening is ever there and they're at an open mic, whatever, that's fine. Come see me there. But yeah, and you can see all my podcasts that I've been guesting on.
I applaud you for doing an open mic stand up thing. I could never
Yeah.
even begin to do that.
Yeah, I'm too anxious at this point. Yeah. Yeah.
It's challenging. I think that's one of the most difficult ways to put yourself out there, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, so tough. Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, anybody that wants to find me on social media, by the way, like message me or something first, because let me know where you heard me, so I'm not like, oh, where are all these friend requests coming from? But yeah.
Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and I think it was a very very interesting conversation. I think very enlightening.
I love the conversation, the podcast, you. It's been a good night.
All right, well, thank you so much, and we will talk to you all again soon. Okay, so there it is. Is It Philosophy? Go to our website at www.isitphilosophy.com and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter and Facebook as well. Help us grow by going onto iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts and subscribe. And take a moment and leave a review. Until next time, question everything, seek your truth, and don't be afraid to speak your truth.